Right, joining us now to talk more law, there's lots of very interesting legal stories around, is Andrew Eborn, barrister and broadcaster. Good evening to you, Andrew.
Good evening, Petrie, and can I say it is always a delight to see you, to listen, and indeed every possible sense is being excited as a result of being back on your show. It's always a thrill.
Thank you very much indeed. Listen, before we get on to your list of fascinating stories, I just want to quickly ask you about whether you think the police should be able to dodge the CPS and charge people themselves. Do you agree with my last guest that it perhaps is not the best idea?
Well, I'll tell you what it is. It's really just to deal with the backlog which we have of cases. And the statistics are quite shocking, really. In March 2015, 16% of crimes were resolved with a charge or summons, and now it's down to 5.6. And the problem is that all these delays, the longer it takes for a court case to come to trial, the more likely it is that the witnesses forget things, the more likely it is that the defendants have trouble trying to get all of their evidence together because of the delays and so on and so forth. So whatever can be done to speed it up can be a good thing. But all of the safeguards that you mentioned and about the trust and so on and so forth are issues that also need to be addressed.
Yeah, it would just seem that just rushing to judgment is perhaps not the solution for the backlog.
Yeah, I think it basically justice needs to be not only done but seen to be done, and the real test is it going to be effective? If it helps with the backlog, that's fantastic. If it doesn't, and it's just another quick way to get it off our desk, that's not good at all.
No. Let's move on to your stories. The minimum marriage age has risen to 18 in England and Wales, but that means that Gretna Green is still on the cards.
Well, Gretna Green is still on the cards, and what it is, it's actually come into force today. It's the Marriage and Civil Partnership Minimum Age Act, which does exactly that. In England and Wales, and it is just England and Wales, you used to be able to get married at 16 or 17. You now have to, in England and Wales, be 18. And the mischief it's trying to deal against is these sort of forced marriages when people are coerced as youngsters. And that's the real issue. But it doesn't apply in Scotland or indeed Northern Ireland, as you say. So Gretna Green is still a possibility. And it's really trying to stop these sort of child marriages. And the UN itself has been pushing for every country to end child marriage by 2030. So it's dealing with that particular problem of basically people, young girls, effectively being forced into marriages, but they don't really know what's going on.
Cultural arranged marriages or forced marriages. But Andrew, I was looking at this and thinking, well, what does it actually achieve? Because many of these marriages take place overseas,
right?
You know, in foreign lands, and presumably, if you're married at 16 in India, for example, and then you and your husband want to come back to the UK, there would be nothing stopping that from happening.
Well, it is difficult, and you might remember famously Mick Jagger with, I think it was to Jerry Hall, one of the marriages were not recognised. So we need to basically tidy up the law, which is why I'd say the UN is looking to end child marriages everywhere by 2030, which is the sort of reality. But you're right, there are still issues elsewhere. What we can do is what we can do, which is deal with the laws in our own particular country, which is making that not legal anymore. And in fact, it's punishable by up to 7 years in prison. So it is a step, people would say, in the right direction. And it's basically been happening for a number of years as a result of various campaigns, as you say, for all these basically people coerced. And the problem, Petrie, was trying to prove that people were being coerced, because it's very difficult to get witnesses coming forward. There are all these horrible, horrible honour killings and things like that. Yeah. So tragic cases. And so it's basically trying to tidy up the practical steps. But you're right, it doesn't apply all around the world. There are still those issues. But people would say it's a step in the right direction.
And I guess at least those young women and men in some cases will know that they shouldn't be getting married until they're 18, and therefore that's knowledge that they've got.
Yeah, I think that's right. The difficulty, even with that knowledge, it is, as you say, a cultural thing, and there is that pressure, but it is illegal, so it just won't be able to happen. And I think, as you rightly say, it doesn't deal with the issue abroad, but certainly it deals with it in England and Wales.
let's have a look at this. This is always something that has interested me, that people can refuse to appear in court at sentencing. It just seems to be a very bizarre thing that they're allowed to do. But it is now expected that murderers could be compelled to appear in court or face longer jail terms. That should stand for everybody, shouldn't
Well, it should, and it came about, as you recall, of the horrible case of Zara Alina, who was murdered by Jordan McSweeney. And McSweeney refused to come up from the cells to listen to his sentence. And normally what will happen in these cases is that you have the victims or the victim's family will make what's called a witness or a victim statement to say, look, how this has affected their life. And they stare at the person found guilty and take them through that. In this particular case, he refused to come up from the cells, and Dominic Raab said he's considering new legislation, basically after meeting the family of Zara Alina, to say, well, they should be compelled, and if they don't, then the judge might be given extra powers, for example, to lengthen the sentence as appropriate.
Quite right too. Quite right too. How dare they be that cowardly as to not be able to take that part of the justice system and not be able to hear the impact that their heinous crimes have created in people's lives.
No, you're absolutely right. And I would be surprised if any of your regular watchers, listeners, would actually say it's right for them to be able to stay down in the cells and avoid that. So
anyone would agree with that.
Exactly. And so I think getting that sort of information, basically, the aunt said, they told the BBC he needs to look at our faces and see how he hadn't just killed Zara, he killed a whole family. And that's the issue, isn't it? It's make sure that people understand the devastating effect that these crimes have.
Yeah, and the fact that they would be given a choice as to whether they stand in front of the judge at any point in the criminal proceedings is ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's the whole point, isn't it? To be judged.
But so that's watch this space. Dominic Raab is looking at that and may well change the law. So next time when I pop in, we can provide an update.
Yeah, excellent. AI created images aren't protected by copyright law.
No,
so if somebody created an AI of me,
yes,
they could do what they like with it.
Well, it's very interesting. And as you know, as a futurist, back to the futurist and all that sort of stuff, I've been talking about this for years. Every possible job that there is that can be automated will be automated. Elon Musk warned about it. Stephen Hawking said it's our greatest possible achievement, but also our greatest existential threat, the advances in AI and technology and robotics and so on and so forth. What's happening is these are computers which are effectively fed on all sorts of material, all sorts of images, all sorts of words, and are coming up with text and drawings and various other things, bits of music. And it was basically held by the US Copyright Office that illustrations in a particular comic book which were created by the AI program called Midjourney are not protected by copyright law. And this particular book in question was something called Zaria of the Dawn. I know you never miss an episode.
Never miss it.
You never miss the dawn. It's got to be good. But they basically said the words themselves, they were looking for a human author is what you need for copyright protection. And when it's the machine that spits it out, they're sort of saying, well, it's not afforded protection. In the UK, it's interesting because we've got the Copyright Designs and Patents Act of 1988. And what that does is basically where the author of a work is created by a computer. Basically, they do give protection for the person who made the necessary arrangements. So it's a balance between, it's rather like if you get a pen, the copyright doesn't go in the pen, but it's a tool that you use for creating the copyright work. It depends to what extent the computer is actually assisting or whether it's all entirely done by the computer.
Well, I suppose that makes sense.
Yeah.
In a way that it shouldn't be copyrighted, because if one computer can produce it, presumably millions can.
Absolutely.
And why it would be,
and what's interesting as well, though, Petrie, it's the underlying copyright work, because when you feed these computers all sorts of existing copyright work, so for example, in 2018, every episode of The Flintstones was fed into one of these AI machines, and it spat out a completely new episode, which looked and sounded and felt like it could be in the series. There's lots of that happening at the moment, where you're taking existing copyright works, and obviously those works might be infringed as a result of being fed into this machine.
Very interesting. All these things have got to be sorted out, haven't they, as these AI get smarter and smarter. Combating cyberbullying with copyright law. How do we do that?
Well, very simply, it's one extra tool in the armour. It's sort of slightly left field, if you like. I don't know, did you see that Netflix documentary, The Most Hated Man on the Internet? Did you have a chance to see that? You did. So it was about anti-revenge porn activists, basically, and they wanted to take down this website, is anyoneUp.com. And what people did for that site, it was founded by somebody called Hunter Moore, and he allowed anybody to anonymously upload nude photos and social media handles and other bits and pieces about others, and basically this was being abused in an appalling way. And it was a documentary which followed Charlotte Laws, whose daughter's photos were shared on the site, and she launched a campaign to shut it down. Well, one of the ways that they were suggesting that you could do this is obviously through copyright, because as a copyright owner, you can control what happens to your copyright work. And it happened very similarly in, if you might remember, Meghan Markle. Well, we don't talk about her very much, do we? Meghan Markle and the letter that she wrote to her father. Well, actually, what that was about, not necessarily about privacy and so on and so forth, but it's actually about copyright was the reason she managed to stop and was successful in her action, because a large chunk of her copyright work was used without her permission. And it's the same with photos. So it's just an extra way that this copywriters can be a powerful tool to combat cyberbullying.
I mean, again, my mind's whirring here, but what if because revenge porn, okay, so your boyfriend or girlfriend films you without your knowledge in compromising positions and then puts that out on the internet. Who owns the copyright?
Well, it's interesting because it's
who filmed it. Is also in it.
Yeah,
who owns it?
Well, it's very simple, because the photographer tends to be the person who owns it unless it's done in the course of their employment. What happened in this particular case is that these were photos that she took herself, and she shared that with her boyfriend, and that's what happens. And sometimes if people are doing that, they take their own photographs or take a selfie of whatever in a position that's and you send that to your then loved one, but you fall out subsequently, and they use those intimate photos. You might be able to have a case on that sort of basis. But you're absolutely right. You need to say, well, who owns the rights? And it's generally the photographer who owns the rights. So if you allow somebody else to take photos, then copyright law is not going to help you personally in that instance.
Yeah, that's worth remembering, isn't it? This line, Eminem versus Real Housewives. What on earth?
Oh, I tell you what it is. It's the joy of trademarks. So Eminem, the fantastic rapper, he's basically trying to block Gazelle Bryant and Robin Dixon, who you will know are two stars of Real Housewives, and they're trying to do a trademark for their podcast called Reasonably Shady, was the name of their podcast. Well, you'll know that Eminem is affectionately known as Slim Shady. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so what he was saying, that the consumers might be tricked into thinking that Eminem was somewhat involved with this podcast, and obviously that's one of the big tests is about confusion and so on and so forth. So he at the moment is trying to stop them getting a trademark for that particular podcast.
And that's crazy. I mean, the word shady isn't his. Just because he was Slim Shady, you can have reasonably shady, not at all shady.
At this time of the night, you get many shadies. Absolutely, I love it. Not so slim. And with Roald Dahl now, you can't call them slim or anything else. You can't have any sort of adjectives like that.
No, you can't.
Yes,
no, you can't
Charlie and the Quinoa Factory. I think you're absolutely right.
That's the new one.
Yeah, so you love that sort of stuff. No, you're absolutely right. But trademarks are really important. And we talked about Mariah Carey failed in her bid to get Queen of Christmas, you might remember. And I told you previously that I was successful in all sorts of trademark things. If you do it in the right way, I own the trademark to the word octopus. I own the trademark to the word failure. And actually, Octopus, my company, now's own Queen of Christmas. There we go, breaking news. So we can talk to people about that sort of side. And I think you can work out protecting in the right sort of way, making sure there are appropriate ways to do it. But you're right, you need to look at confusion, you need to look at what they're going to do with it, and there are procedures to follow. So get in touch if anybody wants to know how to do it properly.
Absolutely. Andrew, thank you very much indeed. Andrew Eborn there, barrister and broadcaster. Lots of really interesting legal stories. Stay with us, we're doing sport.
Thank you so much for your time this evening, Andrew. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thanks a lot. Lovely to see you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
On your own.
I thought I'd lost everything with my pen.